Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Shooting Straight, Living Life in Truth. I'm Charles, your host for the evening, and tonight we're going to be talking about my experiences in basic training. And I'm going to have to dig deep into memory cores to get to that aspect of it because, quite frankly, I went through basic training in June of 1988 at Fort Dix, New Jersey. But hey, bear with me as we go through this. And I'm going to recall as much as I can because it's really one of those things it's hard to forget. But, you know, with age, how things go sometimes. But anyway, without saying much else for now, let's go ahead and get a word from our sponsor.
Are you twisted enough for Twisted Minds escape rooms? Then check us out at twistedminds.com and book an adventure today. You can choose between Camp Calico or the mysteries of Vanished. How about travel back in time to 1840s California and visit Digger's General Store? Or get ready, coming late spring, early summer 2021, a little bit of mayhem at Twisted Minds escape rooms in Palm Coast. Check us out at twistedminds.com or give us a call at 888-92-TWIST. We'll be waiting.
All right, guys, welcome back. Again, as usual, I want to encourage you guys that if you're ever in the Palm Coast area or plan to be in the Palm Coast area, make sure you give Twisted Minds Escape Rooms a call and set up an appointment to do one of their rooms. I'm telling you, folks, you won't be disappointed and you will thoroughly enjoy it. They put a lot of thought and a lot of detail into their rooms, and as a staff, they're excellent. They're great people, and I tell you what, their main and primary interest is that you enjoy yourselves, and they will do everything they can to make sure that you do. So next time you plan on being in Palm Coast, consider taking them up on their offer to do an escape room. You will definitely enjoy it. Now, without further ado, let's talk about basic training. Hooah! Alright, so in case you guys didn't realize it already, with the hints I've given you, I was in the Army. I originally joined up way back in 1987. As a matter of fact, I initially started my Army career in the National Guard. Hang on just a second. All right, sorry about that. Little admin stuff going on there. But where was I? Oh yeah, 1987. When I first signed up, I signed up in 1987 with the National Guard. I originally wanted to join the military and become a chaplain, largely because of the fact that I had the sense that that's what God was calling me to at that particular point in time. And to be honest with you, it's a decision that I'll never regret. It's something that I'm glad I did. I learned a lot through the process of being in the military. But it's yeah, you've probably heard it before, but it's definitely one of those experiences that you're glad you did it, but you probably wouldn't go back and do it again. No, it was an enjoyable experience. Well, I say enjoyable. It was pretty miserable at times, but for the most part, overall, it was enjoyable. Like I said, I'm very happy that I did it. Danielle, take that logo down. It doesn't need to be up there. But in 1987, I was exiting out of my junior year in high school and about to enter my senior year. I haven't graduated in 1988, and Basically, my birthday of 1987, August 24th, 1987, I walked into the recruiter's office and I said, "Hey guys, I want to join the Army National Guard and I want to do it as a chaplain if that's possible." And they told me, "Well, you can join the Army National Guard if you want, but you're not going to be a chaplain because you need a bachelor's degree." And I was like, "Okay, well, since I don't have the bachelor's degree, what can I do in the way of ministering to the troops? Because that's what I want to do." So they told me about chaplain's assistant. And I said, "Cool, sounds good." Um, hang on a second, guys. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that, folks. There is a bit of a delay um, on the stream. I believe there's like a 9-second delay, so try and keep that in mind for future reference. Also, uh, it seems like Danielle's having some issues bringing it up on YouTube on her phone. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and continue with this anyway, because according to what I'm seeing on the feedback and on the system health, we've got an excellent connection and things are going fine, so I don't know what the story is on that. Uh, but I will definitely look into it between now and next week. But in the meantime, hopefully you guys are seeing this. If not, then hopefully you'll catch the replay. But anyway, enough of that stuff. You guys didn't tune in for that. So, military wise, where was I? Oh, yeah. In the recruiter's office, speaking with him. So, we ended up deciding to go with chaplain's assistant. And there was a couple times they tried to talk me out of it and tried to talk me into something else. And I was like, no, I want chaplain's assistant, and that's what I want to be. And when they saw my ASVAB scores, that settled the issue. They weren't arguing with me anymore. And it was interesting. I thought it was funny. And later on, after I got done with basic training and came back to the unit, which was like a year later, a year and a half later, I asked them about that. And I asked them why all of a sudden they had a change in attitude and stopped trying to convince me to do something else. And they basically told me, well, your ASVAB scores were high enough that technically there was only 12 jobs in the military that you wouldn't be able to do with those ASVAB scores. And quite frankly, when we see scores like that, we don't like to lose the candidate, so we gave you what you wanted. I was like, cool. So for anybody wanting to go into the military, make sure your ASVAB scores are high. If you do really well on the ASVAB test, you'll pretty much be able to choose what you want to do, and not get a whole lot of argument out of it. And there are some other things that help motivate that as well. But I'm just saying, as far as the ASVAB tests, make sure you score well on those. Me, first time I took it, I was in high school, junior in high school was the first time I took it. And I went through it. And I went through the first half like I was supposed to. Read the questions, give the answer. Read the question, give the answer. Read the question, give the answer. Read the question, give the answer. And by the time I was a quarter of the way through it, I was already feeling like my intelligence was being insulted. And I grew very bored with that test very quickly. So by the time I was halfway done with the test, I was like, the heck with it. And I Christmas treed half of it. And despite having Christmas treed half of it, my scores were still high enough that there were only 12 jobs I couldn't do. To this day, I still can't figure that one out, but it is what it is. So moving on. Went through the whole MEPS process. At the time here in Jacksonville, the MEP station, the main MEP station was there on Phillips Highway. And that's where I shipped out to go to basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey. And if I remember correctly, I shipped out on June 3rd, which was like a day or two after I graduated from my senior year in 1988. Which kind of upset my mother a little bit because, well, that's her birthday, June 3rd. So I got shipped out on my mom's birthday. But at least she understood I had no choice in the issue. I had to go. So I get on this bus, and I spend God only knows how long on that bus, riding up to Fort Dix, New Jersey. And we get up to Fort Dix, and it's like wee hours in the morning. Fortunately, I had already taken a nap and had been sleeping on the bus, just because, for whatever reason, being in a car and being on a bus, something about the vibrations and the engine noise that tends to put me to sleep. It's kind of like an ASMR type thing for me. Don't know why that is. Always been that way. But when we got there, it was like wee hours in the morning. I'm talking like, I don't know, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And they do it on purpose. I'm convinced of it. Nobody could ever tell me any different. But we get there, and the drill sergeant comes on the bus. And I tell you what, let me back up a minute. Prior to going to basic training, I had asked a few folks some advice and thoughts on getting through basic training and what they would suggest. And of course, I asked people that had already been through basic training. And repeatedly, one thing kept coming back over and over and over again. And that was the statement, no matter what happens, just remember this one thing. The drill sergeants are there to prepare you and train you to survive the battlefield. So no matter what happens, just remember that one thing, and you'll be fine. Oh, and follow instructions. Make sure you follow instructions to the letter. If they don't say it, don't do it. Do only what they tell you. I was like, okay, cool. So we get there, and the drill sergeant comes on the bus. And my first introduction to a drill sergeant, they didn't waste any time, boy. I mean, they're much nicer about it today when they come on the bus. But when they got on my bus, put that image of the drill sergeant up. I know I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, but put that image of the drill sergeant up. When that drill sergeant came on the bus, I got a rude awakening. And this is the kind of thing that I saw from my drill sergeant. When he got on there, he said, "Get off my GD bus right now! Move, 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 move!" And I'm telling you what, from that second on, that's all I heard, all of basic training, was just some dude in a round brown yelling and cussing up a storm at us, barking orders and doing all this kind of stuff. And to be honest with you, part of me wanted to laugh, and the other part of me just wanted to go, okay, let's do this. So, but yeah, imagine that being the first thing you see when you arrive at Fort Dix, New Jersey, or arrive anywhere for basic training, all right? I mean, as an 18-year-old or as a 17-year-old, 19-year-old, who's never been exposed to that kind of behavior, you're sitting back going, good Lord, what the hell did I get myself into? Like I said, first minutes, very first time somebody, a drill sergeant opens their mouth, and this is what we saw, basically. Of course, it was a different person, but this is basically what we saw. It was somebody yelling at us and doing the hand point. It just, I mean, what are you going to think, guys? I mean, come on, think about it. Put yourself in that shoes. Okay, you can pull that one down. So we get off the bus. They set us up all in these lines, and I won't go into this too much because you can see several videos of it on YouTube. They get you in line, and then they tell you how to stand at attention. They tell you this, they tell you that, and they give you all these instructions, and it's like a load of information just all at once, you know? And it's 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. You're tired as all get out. And they're screaming all these instructions at you. And then they tell you, right face. And you go left instead of right. And they are all up in your face going, what's the matter with you? Didn't Mama teach you the difference between right and left? I said right, not left. It is just non-stop. I mean, non-stop. Anytime anybody, it didn't matter who it was, anytime anybody messed something up, man, that round brown was right there in your face. Now, mind you, in 1987, this was, I think, 2 years after they put a stop to drill sergeants being able to strike the soldiers physically with their fists. So they couldn't hit you, but their way around that was they get so close to you when they were yelling at you that the round brown, you know, that drill sergeant hat that you saw in the other photo, would hit you right here on the forehead. And they'd be like, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, see the round brown? You see that little brim right there? Man, I'm telling you what, it's cardboard, but I swear to God, it feels like a brick after about 5 strikes from that thing. And they'd sit there and they'd be yelling at you, and their head would be going like this the whole time, right? That brim, just that slender little brim right there at the edge would be hitting you right here in the forehead. Boom, 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 boom. The whole time they're yelling at you. And I'm sitting there, and the first time that happened to me, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, yes, drill woodpecker. You know, it's like I felt like I was a tree that a woodpecker was pecking on. You know, it's like, come on, dude, back up. And I darn sure don't need you spitting in my face. How unsanitary and disgusting and gross is that, dude? Come on. Yell at me if you want, but not in my face, all right? Obviously, I didn't say that. You know, I'm not stupid, all right? But no, it was crazy. From that very first second that they get on the bus, man, it's just nonstop craziness like that. And the statements that would come out of their mouths, it's like, oh my God, somebody had to train them to be that way and to say those things. And come to find out, yeah, they do. In drill sergeant school, they teach you how to say stuff like that. But then part of it, too, was part of their own creativity and their own wit. And you could tell which ones were the dry drill sergeants outside of the uniform and which ones weren't. It was pretty obvious. But anyway, so they get us in those lines, and then they pull us into this building, and they go through the whole processing thing, filling out paperwork, assigning us to units and all that kind of stuff. And then they get you out in formation once that's all over with. And by this time, it's, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning. And it's just getting light out. And they get you into formation. They bark a bunch of instructions to you on how to march, you know, what the proper way to march is. You know, you always start out on your left foot. You only take a 30-inch step. And you stay in step. And here's the thing. You're not good enough. You're not good enough yet, and you're not qualified yet to be able to sing the cadences with us. So until that time where you have earned the privilege to be able to sing cadences, you will just listen to me sing cadence, and you had better stay in step. All right, so got a bunch of civilians, never done a day in their life of any kind of military training, no ROTC, no junior ROTC, no nothing, no, absolutely clueless about the military. And you want them to stay in step. Oh, yeah, sure, okay. Like, that's going to happen, right? So, literally, it was like every 15 steps, they would be, platoon, ho! And we were like, oh, God, here we go. Here we go. Somebody screwed up. Get ready for the front leaner rest position. It was like, oh, come on. Guys, get your X together. It's not that hard. When they want you to step on the left foot, you step on the left foot. When you see the guy in front of you step down with the left foot, you step down with the left foot. It's that easy. Come on. But yeah, every 15 steps, it was platoon, ho. And you're like, here we go. Next thing you'd hear would be half right, peace. You turn 45 degrees to the right. And God help you if you screwed that up, because you just added to the amount of push-ups you were about to do. And then they go, front leaner rest position, move. And you drop, get down into a push-up position. And then they would go, what was it? Anyway, they tell you like 4-count push-up, ready, begin. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you go down on 1, up on 2, down on 3, up on 4, and that was a 4-count push-up. So you're literally doing 2 push-ups for every 1 that they count. And man, they would sit there, they would make you do at least 20 of those. So basically you were doing 40 push-ups every time they made you stop. And then if they really wanted to be cruel about it, they just, platoon, halt, half right, peace, front leaner rest position, move. And then they'd sit there and just chew you out for the next 10 minutes while you're in the push-up position, not doing any push-ups, just sitting there holding yourself. It's about as close to planking as we ever got in the military. It just, oh my goodness. And, after about 5 minutes, that'll get to you, especially if you're not used to it. So the half-mile march to the barracks where I was going to be at ended up taking us from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the morning. It took us 2 hours to go a half a mile because people couldn't get stepping on their left foot at the proper time correct, or couldn't do the half right face correct. So, think about that. Just push up, push up, push up, push up, push up, front leaner rest position, move. And that's all you hear for 2 hours, all right? Then we finally get to the barracks. And this is where things really start getting interesting, because they will confiscate all of your civilian luggage, which means any suitcases or anything like that that you brought with you, they take. And they lock it away in this closet down in the lower portion of the barracks. In some room, you have no idea where it's at, but they take it from you, and you don't see it, and you're not going to see it until the very end of basic training at that point. So once they do that, then they turn around and they march you everywhere. So, needless to say, every time someone screws up, you're doing push-ups. Needless to say, that gets old real fast. The idea behind that is peer pressure to force the compliance with how to properly do things at that point. But anyway, they march you off. They get you your uniforms, which back in my day was the BDU uniform, which was the woodland battle dress uniform. which looks like this, not like the ones that we have today. And there was two types. You had your winter version, which was a bit thicker, made mostly out of cotton and polyester. Well, mostly cotton, and it was actually pretty heavy in the way of clothing. But you would get uh, the outer garment, the shirt there, and the pants, and then they would also assign you these ugly, ugly brown T-shirts, which is about the same color as the brown in the uniform. So it was just the whole thing was just nasty. Then you get issued your boots, and then once you got your boots, then they turn around and issue your load bearing equipment, which we knew as LBE or LBV, or load bearing vest or load bearing equipment, which, as you can see here, was a utility belt that usually had two ammo pouches, two canteens, your first aid pouch, which is what you see up on the upper portion of the harness there on the left side. And on your ammo pouches, you notice there's also two pouches on either side of the ammo pouch for grenades. And then on the inside of the pouch, you would have room enough to fit magazines for your M16 and stuff. But this is what that equipment looked like back when I went through basic training. It was basically leftovers from the Vietnam War and what we were using during the time of Vietnam. But it's, as you've seen recently, things have changed quite a bit in the uniform and the equipment that gets used. And some of it's good, some of it I don't know what to think of. But the folks in the military now swear by it. So what am I going to say? Obviously, the equipment that I had was better than the stuff that we had in World War II. So as time goes on, things get improved, and it's obvious that it makes a soldier's life easier, makes their ability to function on the battlefield more efficient, and that's generally the whole concept behind it. You'll hear complicated terms and stuff thrown around like force multipliers, but essentially that's what they're talking about, is making equipment that makes a soldier more efficient, thus being more effective on the battlefield. And that's really what force multiplication is all about. It's kind of like having one individual, but it seems like there's 3 or 4 individuals instead. And that's what force multiplication is, really. It's efficiency of effort and movement. But anyway, so we get our uniforms, we get the LBE. The next place that we would go to would be the barber shop. Now, I don't know what you've seen in the movies, but this is the haircut everybody gets. It all comes off. There's none of the stuff that you see in Stripes where somebody says, oh, just, take a little off the side, trim the bangs up just a little bit. No. You sit down in the chair. The barbers don't even ask you any questions. They just grab those clippers and they make you bald. Everybody gets that kind of haircut. So we were doing it even before Sinead O'Connor even thought about it. I don't know. Some of you guys may be too young to remember Sinead O'Connor, but hey, look her up. You'll understand what I'm talking about. So, military was doing that long before anybody else in the civilian world got the idea for it. And there's a bunch of reasons for it. Medical reasons, practicality reasons, conformity reasons, psychological reasons. But yeah, when you've got a full head of hair and now all of a sudden you're bald and your ears are sticking way out and everybody looks at you and thinks, Dumbo! It takes a little getting used to. Because back in those days, I didn't have quite as much of this, facial cheek stuff and the fat and the cushioning here. I was real slender through the face, and my ears were like out to where my earmuffs are. So it just, at least it looked that way. All right. But I wish I still had the photos back when I went through so that you could see what I'm talking about. Yeah, because, the hair came off and my ears were just out there. So I could identify with poor Dumbo being picked on about his big ears. Um, but anyway, uh, I digress on that one. Uh, oh man, those days, I tell you what. Anyway, so that was the first day. Then they'd march you back to the barracks and they would have you change into your new uniforms that you just got, put on that nasty brown t shirt, and then your uniforms with your hat and your boots and all that kind of stuff. And they would have you bring your civilian clothes to include your well, not your tennis shoes. If they were your running shoes and they were authorized running shoes, then you could keep those. But otherwise, everything else, your shirt, your pants, your shorts, whatever it was that you were wearing, socks, all your civilian stuff had to come downstairs. They confiscated that and put it into your bags, um, and then they locked them away permanently. And that was the last time you ever got to see your bags again, your personal civilian stuff again. Um, then they'd form you up downstairs outside again in the courtyard, and they'd march off to the chow hall. Which, fortunately for us, the chow hall was literally right at the end of our building, across the street. So we'd get there, and that's when we got introduced to the concept of you have 5 minutes, maggots, to get your food, eat it, and be out of my mess hall. Do I make myself clear? Yes, drill sergeant. Now, what they didn't tell you was the minute you pick your tray up, that's when your 5 minutes starts. And it takes about 2 to 3 minutes just to get your food on the tray. So by the time you sit down, you're talking you might have 2 to 3 minutes to eat your meal and be up out of your seat. Because that's when their 5 minutes would stop counting. And if you've ever wondered why military people eat so fast and it seems like they inhale their food without tasting it, that's why. Because initially, in order for me to even remotely get filled up or even get rid of the hunger pains that I had, I would have to start eating it while I was in line. And then they caught on to what I was doing, and then they said, no eating in line. You wait till you get to your seat. I'm like, ah. So then you get to your seat, and you'd have like 2 minutes to eat before you had to get up. So, yeah, you're like, no ifs, no ands, no buts. You didn't worry about tasting it. You just put it down to fill your belly and move on. Because if you weren't out within that 5 minute time frame, then you were doing push-ups. Yeah, as they would say, you're going to be pushing up dicks. And they weren't kidding. They weren't kidding. So at the end of the first week, after all the in-processing stuff was done, all the paperwork was done and everything else, that was known as 0 week. And week 1 starts red phase. All right. So back when I went through, there were 3 phases. There was red phase, white phase, blue phase, and you would go through each one of those uh, in a sequential order. Pardon me. So as you can see here on the far left, reception battalion. That's where, I was talking about, you get your hair cut, you get your uniforms issued to you, you go through all the medical or all the medical processing, all the paperwork processing, all that kind of stuff. That was for the first 4 days, i.e. the first week. Well, red phase starts your official count towards graduating basic training and where your training actually starts. So at this point now, you're 4 days in. On your 5th day, you're going to bed, i.e. lights out, at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. No, it was 10 p.m. And then you were being woke up at 4 a.m. every day. If you were in a position of leadership within your platoon, then it might be a little bit different. You were up until 11 or midnight. but nevertheless, you were still back up at 4 a.m. So you have all these people here that are tired, not used to getting only, 4 to 6 hours worth of sleep each day. And now you're putting them into a classroom where you're going over some of the most boring material on the face of the planet. Army values, what are they? Leadership, right? And you got physical readiness training that they're talking about, and you're doing PT every morning at 4:30 in the morning. And then you got your equal opportunity training, your first, you got, and this is all administrative type stuff that they're going over, explaining to you what's going to happen with, your APFT testing, your first aid training, your foot marches, personal finance, drill and ceremonies, all of this kind of stuff. And drill and ceremony is where they basically teach you how to do right face, left face, about face, rear face, parade rest, all those different kind of positions and stuff. So yeah, literally like the first 3 weeks, you're going over all that stuff. You're going over how to dismantle or search out mines, find mines, going through the confidence tower. Well, that all depends, because sometimes they would leave that till the last. In my particular unit, the confidence tower would come at the end of basic training in blue phase. But as you can see here, there's a whole bunch of different things that they put on there. But weeks 1 through 3 were primarily sitting in a classroom. Okay. One of the things that you would go over during that time would be your land navigation. Now, land navigation is how do you read a map? And let me tell you what, these classes broke it down. If you've ever heard the term idiot proof, that's the way these classes were set up. And I'm telling you what, I mean, they would broke it down. You'd have primary terrain features, and they would break down those. I think it's 5 or 6, and then you'd have 3 secondary terrain features, and you'd have to be able to identify them all, know how to find them on the map, know what the differences between the elevation lines was, and all this kind of stuff, and talk about grid north, magnetic north, true north, and you had to know the difference between the two, which ways whether to add or multiply, or add or subtract when you're trying to figure out your azimuths, and they were going over all these kind of things. What the difference was between a 4-digit grid coordinate and a 6-digit grid coordinate, an 8-digit grid coordinate, and a 10-digit grid coordinate. And all of these things, these are the things that you would go over in those first 3 weeks when you're exhausted, and it's everything you can do to keep your eyes open during the classroom, because you just want to. And inevitably, it's like every 5 minutes, you'd hear somebody's name called out. Then, you having trouble keeping your eyes open, maggot? Well, let's see if we can't get some blood flowing to them brain cells to keep you awake, boy. Get outside. And you like, ooh, somebody's about to get smoked. And what we mean by smoked is you were about to do a whole bunch of PT till you were so wore out, all you wanted to do was sleep. But that's how the classroom time in the first 3 weeks would go, is doing stuff like that. And you'd be in a large classroom like this, and then the AC would not be able to keep up with it. So inevitably, especially at Fort Dix during the summertime in a building like that, oh my God, it was so hot. You'd be dripping sweat onto your maps. And the drill sergeants would get on to you about that. So, boy, don't you be messing up my map. Maggot, don't you be putting them cooties on my maps now. And this would be the face you would see. And it just, oh my God, what on earth did I get myself into? Why did I ever do this? Oh my goodness. I'm telling you guys, it's craziness right from the start. But then, we turn around and get into the first aid classes. Now, the first aid classes were a little bit different. There was a lot of classroom time, kind of like what you see here. And if you've ever been to like a Red Cross BLS type training course where you learn CPR, it it was kind of like that, but you were still in a classroom and you'd be paired off like this with a mannequin, and half of you would do it one time, the other half would do it the next time. Um, but in this is somebody's unit, but in basic training, back then you would not have males and females mixed together. It would all be males in your company and in your platoon and in your class. It was all male or all female. There was no mixing of the sexes there. Um, and they went out of their way to discourage you from even thinking about getting with the opposite sex. And if I even told you about half the things that they said or did to discourage it, hmm, I could see the comments from the feminists and everybody coming
How
real
dare you!
quick. But it was reality. That's the way things were back then. Um, and honestly, internally I could not help but laugh at their comments because they were just so far out there. It was crazy. You had to laugh. Um, but anyway, back to first aid training. Um, so you were in a classroom, but you were still kind of physically active in the process of the training, so it helps you stay awake. So at this point, things are starting to get a little more psychologically easier because you're starting to fall into the routine. You're starting to understand what they're looking for as far as drill and ceremony. You're catching on to, you know, how to survive without dropping to do push-ups and PT every 15 steps. Um, and somewhere along, pardon me, somewhere along this time frame, as you're finishing up the first aid training and stuff, people are catching on to it enough that you start hearing the drill sergeants go, "You guys keep up this good stuff and you just might be able to start singing cadences with me now. But don't hold your breath, because inevitably one of you maggots is going to screw it up for everybody." Um, so, things would psychologically start getting easier about this point because you were starting to settle into the routine and understanding what was expected of you. So it made focusing on things like your first aid training, how to apply to field dressing, how to perform CPR, how to do, the Heimlich maneuver, all those kind of things. And so things would start becoming a little easier. And by the time you were done with all of this, now it was time to move into white phase. And white phase is where you started getting into more of your physical type stuff when it came to your training. You'd start getting into your tactical training, your focus on your Army physical fitness test would kick in a little bit more. You'd go on longer foot marches. You'd start your rifle marksmanship training. You do the obstacle courses. You continue doing some of the other basic things like memorizing your warrior's ethos, memorizing your soldier's creed, memorizing the Army values, and stuff like that. But it started to become more focused on the physical aspects of the training. Like one of them that you would get into before you get into your basic rifle marksmanship would be your hand-to-hand combat, and that's where you would learn how to do tosses, throw punches, kick, use your environment to your advantage, use your rifle, how to do butt strokes, slashes, things like that. And you'd get into doing things like your bayonet training, which that was interesting. Unfortunately for me, I never got to participate in it because during one of the PT sessions in the morning, I ended up developing a severe case of bursitis in my left ankle, which literally put me flat on the ground. I'm sitting there doing what everyone is familiar with is jumping jacks, but we called them side straddle hops. So on the downward motion where you bring your legs together on one of those, when I came down on my feet, my left ankle gave out, and before I knew what was going on, my face was like inches from the ground. And I was just in so much pain. I can't even begin to describe what that pain felt like. But the only thing I could refer to it is it felt like somebody had stuck a bayonet through my ankle. And the drill sergeant, of course, did his usual routine of coming over, getting in your face and yelling like inches from your ear, telling me that I needed to get my lazy butt up. Not in those terms, but and I told him that I couldn't put any weight on that ankle because when I did get up and I tried to put weight on that ankle, I ended up on the ground again. And so that banter back and forth between the drill sergeant and myself went on for like 2 or 3 minutes. And then it dawned on him and he realized that I wasn't kidding, that I was actually being serious. But rather than let everybody know that, he was like, "Maggot, get your butt up, get in there to the CQ desk, get you a sick call slip, and go down to sick call. And if you come back here and you're not on crutches, your butt is mine." And it was more your ass is grass and I'm the lawnmower, is what he said. So you better not be fooling around, boy. So I get up, no help, by myself. I hop from where we were doing PT to the CQ desk, which is roughly about 100 yards, hopping on one leg, get in there, get my sick call slip, and then I hop a quarter-mile down to where sick call is, and the doctor does his evaluation and stuff, and then determines that I had what was considered to be a severe case of bursitis in the left ankle. So guess what happened? He puts me in one of those orthopedic shoes and gives me a pair of crutches and sends me back to the company. And I come back as they're forming up to go to morning chow. And the drill sergeant looks at me and goes, "Damn, son, you do it right, don't you?" And I said, "Always have, drill sergeant, always will." And he just looked at me and smiled and turned around and went back to harassing everybody else. I turned in my sick call slip. They gave it back to me, and I was on a profile where I was on light duty for 4 weeks. Now, at this point, we're like 4 weeks into this thing, and now I'm going 4 weeks where I'm on light duty, no physical activity at all. I mean, I can still attend classes, I can still go to things and pick up the information, but I'm not allowed to participate. And it's during this time, all right, it's during this time that I'm sitting here on profile that we go to the bayonet course. We go to the bayonet course. I had been looking forward to that course and that training since I got to basic training. And I wanted to do it so bad. I drove my drill sergeants crazy. I was like, come on, drill sergeant, let me do it. Let me do it. I want to do this. And they said, no, you can't. No. I was like, come on, drill sergeant. So we went back and forth for hours. Every time I saw a drill sergeant, I was begging for them to let me do it, and they wouldn't let me do it. So I missed out on doing the whole bayonet course. But it is what it is, you know. So then after that, we got into the grenade training, where we started learning how to do grenades and throwing the grenades properly. You know, this whole bit, yeah, like you see right there on your screen. Like, what the heck? This is a grenade. It's not a shot put. But that's how they wanted you to throw it, and that's how we train. So we would do it that way. We'd get through the training. We'd get the passing grades, and then they would take us to the live grenade range. Oh, my goodness. Hello, baby, live grenades. Yeah, talk about getting your motor running. Let's get them grenades. So as you can see here, we do all, you know, they would make us do, or make us throw one grenade the proper way, you know, doing all the pull the pin, release the spoon, shot put it, and then you would drop down into the foxhole, which was usually made of concrete with reinforced with steel. Just because when those things go off, oh my God, guys. The movies do not portray it right at all, not even close. When those things go off, the shockwave coming through the ground knocked the dust out of the concrete. It was that powerful, and you could feel it rip through your body. I mean, if you've ever stood at a concert in front of the speakers down by the stage where the subwoofers are, and they're kicking and they're thumping, and you're feeling that bass go through your body, multiply that about 20 times over, and that's what it feels like when a grenade shockwave hits you. Now, mind you, you're throwing these things about 50 yards or so, and when they go boom, you're hearing shrapnel hit the protective cage that is protecting everybody else in line waiting to throw their grenades. That's another 50 yards behind you. So, I mean, you throw it 50 yards this way and you're hearing shrapnel hit 50 yards that way. And it's incredibly loud, guys. It's crazy. And I shocked my drill sergeant that was in the foxhole with me when I got up to throw mine. Because after I threw the first one and I looked at him and I said, "Drill sergeant, can I throw it the way I want to now?" He said, "Absolutely, as long as you get it farther than you did the last one." And I said, "How far is that tank down there?" Because we had a mobilized tank that wasn't functioning at the end of the range lane that I was on. He said, "That's 75 yards." I was like, "Okay, how much you give me if I hit it?" He says, "You know I can't bet, but if you hit it, I'll make sure you get a little extra food on your next chow line." I was like, "You got it." "Get ready, because I'm going to hit it." He says, "Yeah, okay, we'll see." I pull that pin, I chunk back, boom, threw that thing as hard as I could. And we sat there and we waited. And like 4 seconds went by, and then we heard tink, and then boom, where the grenade went off. So essentially what happened was I actually hit the tank before the grenade went off. And when we got it, and guys, I'm not kidding, I was still hearing shrapnel hit the line cage behind us. 75 yards that way, 50 yards that way, and I was still hearing shrapnel hit the cage. And the shockwave was a little bit less where I was at when it finally got to us, but nevertheless, it was still pretty hard. It was thumping even harder than concert speakers do. But anyway, long story short, he was shocked. I got extra food in the next chow line, and we moved on. But by the time, I'm going to have to cut this short because I'm running out of time. And there's so much other stuff that I could tell you guys about basic training. I may just have to continue this next week and push some of the other stuff back. But I will give you this much. Um, I finally did come off my profile literally the night before our final PT test. Fully off. If my profile hadn't run out the day before, then I would have ended up having to be recycled, meaning I would have had to have gone through basic training all over again. But because my profile ended the day before the PT test, it all came down to whether or not I could perform the PT test. Now, mind you, for 4 weeks, I have been allowed to do absolutely no PT, no push-ups, no running, no sit-ups, none of that. Wasn't allowed to do it because I was on profile. So the drill sergeants and the company commander and the first sergeant and senior drill sergeant and all these and my peers around me were all concerned, whether or not I was going to be able to pass the PT test. Because if I didn't, I was going to get recycled. And none of them wanted to see me get recycled. But that was what I was facing. So I was like, you know what? Since I haven't done this, I need to wake my body up and make sure that it's ready for tomorrow. So I dropped down and I started doing some push-ups. I put my left leg, my left ankle up on top of my right ankle so that there wasn't any weight bearing going on it, so I wasn't violating my profile, so nobody could get on to me about that. And then the drill sergeant walks in and he looks at me and goes, "Private Sutton, what are you doing?" I was like, "Waking my body up to prepare for the PT test tomorrow, drill sergeant." He goes, all right, well, just don't overdo it, because you know what happens tomorrow if you don't pass." And I said, "Roger that, drill sergeant. I won't." So carry on then. Which is really weird, because that's not the way they would normally act. But anyway, so I did some push-ups. And the next day I went out there, and I did 20 push-ups more than I had originally done when I first got to basic training. I had done 40 more sit-ups than what I had done when I originally got to basic training and did that first PT test, and then improved my run time by more than a minute. And nobody understood it. Nobody could explain it, because, I mean, how do you have an increase in performance like that on the PT test when you've done nothing for 4 weeks in the way of physical exercise or training? Nobody could explain it. Nobody understood it. But I always knew that if I pushed my body to the limit like they had done for the first 4 weeks, I was going to need to step back and take a break. Otherwise, my body was going to tear down and get worse, not get better. And I just knew that. And come to find out later on in life, a few years down the road, they come to find out, yeah, you push it to the limit, but then you back off to give your body some recuperation time, and you're able to improve your performance that way. So long story short, they were impressed. They were shocked by it. And the day of graduation, I'm sitting there with my mom on the left side, my grandmother on the right side, and I'm putting my heavy duffel bag and my rucksack, or my duffel bag, and my civilian suitcases in the back of the trunk, in the back of the car, in the trunk. And all of a sudden I feel a tap on my left shoulder. So I look up at my mom, and it wasn't her. I look back, and it was my senior drill sergeant. So instinctually, I snapped around, came to parade rest, and he said, "At ease, soldier, at ease. Carry on, carry on. We're not doing that here, not right now." I was like, "Roger that, drill sergeant." He said, "I just came over here because I wanted to tell you something." He said, "I don't know how you pulled off your PT test. I don't know how you managed to do what you did, but if it hadn't have been for your profile, you would have graduated probably in the top 2% of this class. And I just wanted to let you know that, soldier, you can be in my foxhole any day. I'll be honored to have you. And that just floored me. And the next thing I know, the first sergeant and the company commander came over and did the same thing. Then my other drill sergeants came over and did the same thing. And of course, Mom and Grandma, not understanding what just happened, asked me about it once we got into the car and started to drive away from Fort Dix. And then I explained it to them, and I said, when a soldier tells you, I would be honored to have you in my foxhole, and you can be in my foxhole any day, or says anything similar to that, they have honestly paid you a compliment that is considered to be more valuable than even the Medal of Honor. And it's the highest compliment that any soldier can give you. And because what they're literally saying is I trust you with my life. I trust you with my life in your hands. And I can't even begin to express to you what that felt like at the end of basic training when that happened. But anyway, my time is up. I need to cut this off. So I will probably go over more of it next week. But for now, let's go ahead and open things up for questions. I do not have the phone lines available, but if you have any questions, put it in the chat for me. If you have questions real quick, I'll try to answer those fast. If not, then all right. Then we will call this a night, and we will see y'all next week. God bless and have a good one, guys.